Hello and welcome to another episode of the midierror Meets podcast, where we speak to all kinds of people who work in sound and music. On the show this time, we've got Charlotte Hatherley, who is an incredibly talented producer, performer, guitarist, singer. She was in the band Ash for 8 years from the age of 18. She's had an extensive solo career, releasing 4 studio albums. And she's been in a number of other bands as well. She's been part of Bat for Lashes. She's toured with Bryan Ferry. She was in an amazing group called NZCA Lines, and possibly still is. And she's also toured with Tunstell, Birdy, and many more. Right now, Charlotte is the program leader at the Institute of Contemporary Music Performance and has also starred in The Last Man by Gavin Rothery, which is a great short film you should go and check out. Thank you once again for listening, and you can support Sonic State on Patreon or on YouTube memberships. We do appreciate your support. Stick around to the end of the show and I will recommend another episode for your delectation. But in the meantime, let's get into the chat. And the first thing I asked Charlotte was about where she is.
I'm at home in my upstairs attic, I guess you'd call it. It's kind of like a dumping ground for stuff I can't be bothered to get rid of, like an old pram and a shit old bike.
Bike in the attic is always helpful.
Yeah. Stuff that I really need to get to the dump, but just not really getting down to making the time. But that's cool. It's sort of also it's my music room, so it's got all my stuff in it, which is sort of spread about in various boxes.
Nice. Wow, amongst the bike and the pram.
Yeah, I know. That's what I suppose that's a good metaphor for my life at the moment.
Yeah, it all entwines. And what does your studio look like? What sort of gear have you got there? What's your setup?
Well, I've got lots of little things like my Ableton Move, which is my
nice
new toy. I've got my trusty OP1. There you go. It's not so good for audio.
Amazing. People know what an OP1 is.
Yeah. I got my MS-20, my OB6 synth.
Oh, lovely.
Got my Juno 60 in the corner. Push 3 is my new sort of go-to pedal, digital pedal, and all my guitar stuff in various sort of flight cases and bass and whatnot. So yeah, just like I'm not someone with a tremendous amount of like outboard gear. It's very much like working in the box, but with, I guess my workflow is much more tools based, but putting it through digital processing. So I try to use my guitars and bass as much as possible, but I'm in a sort of, I suppose I'm in quite a software world. The computer's a lot of heavy lifting.
Yeah, you've got 2 Ableton devices as well.
Yeah, I got the Push 2 and the Push 3. So the Push 3 I'm using as a pedal board, basically, because it's like an audio interface.
That's really cool.
So I can plug my guitar into it and then create digital pedal boards, basically. But you can get super specific with that. If you want to use it in that way, it means that I can get really, really detailed with the sounds that I'm crafting, whereas with the pedal board it's much more just like turning knobs and sort of there's no real science to it. But as soon as you start building track by track, you can do so when I toured with Bat for Lashes a couple of years ago, I took it out as a sort of experiment, really. It was like, I'm going to use this tour to explore this new setup.
Really cool.
So every song in the set, you can program a digital pedal board, but it sort of goes one step beyond analog pedals into production, really, because you can then add EQ and compression, and you can like automate filters, and you can get really ridiculously deep into it. So I've been really enjoying that. There's obviously still things that my analog pedal board can do infinitely better than any digital sounds can do, but there's a happy medium between the two.
Yeah, that's a really unique way of using push. I've never heard of anyone doing that. But I
Yeah,
can see the integration being amazing.
yeah. There's definitely it's really good for creating sound design, which it kind of leads you down that textural virtuosity. So some of the stuff I've been exploring, which sort of overlaps into this whole academic domain that I'm working within at the moment, is moving away from, I guess, traditional rock virtuosity and show-offy guitar solos, which I guess were never really my thing anyway, just because I was never like technically a brilliant guitar player, but I could sort of work with it in an angular way that I really liked. But now the virtuosity, especially when you're working with tools like Ableton and Push 3, is much more about sculpting the sound. And that aligns well with the artists that I've been playing with, like Back for Lashes, who are sort of electronic art pop, and requires a nice balance between 80s infused chorus guitars with the Cure influences, but then like very sort of Lynchian soundscapes, so that balance of the analog pedals and the digital stuff, where you can really fuck with the sounds that you're making, really works with certain kinds of artists. So rather than being a session musician who's like gun for hire noodling, I sort of find myself in this more expressive timbrel area, which is kind of cool. I don't really know how that's happened.
It's great. Do you use the buttons for like scene selection or launching tracks while you're playing?
Well, no, but you can do, and some of the things I have been exploring is actually writing music and demos. So like if you write a 2-minute long sketch of a demo, then taking those elements and putting them into session view and using push in that way, where you're triggering loops, but then you're also playing the guitar, so it becomes like a performance. So it's almost, yeah, I haven't quite figured out how to describe it. You're kind of like reverse. You're taking a demo and then you're deconstructing it into pre-prepared loops, and you are using the buttons because you're looping them or like triggering them, and then you're affecting them and you're adding effects as you go. So it becomes a very interactive performance with whatever instrument you want to be playing at the time. And that's really so what is like a 2-minute sketch can often become like a 20-minute jam, and then you just sculpt the best bits from that. So at the moment I'm finding that because you can knock out a 2-minute sketch quite easily. It's not going to be amazing, but there's always like elements inside that are amazing. But it's like just taking, rather than getting bogged down in the arrangement view, it's almost like you're removing the door completely. So you're like, well, I've got that here, and rather than now working on this grid in a sort of very predictable way of like, here's the intro, here's the chorus, and that goes there, then you're sort of ignoring that bit, and instead almost like you would then take an idea to a band in a rehearsal room and you would like jam it out and feel it out as a group, and everyone would contribute. So you're kind of doing a one-man band but using the push 3 is I guess how I'm doing it. So like, I've got this idea. Here are the parts, but I'm triggering them and looping them and bringing them in, and then feeling the arrangement in a way that you would in a live context, but you're recording yourself.
It's really good
This
because
is
I
me
think
not having any friends. So,
I think with loop pedals, there was always that element of like you're kind of just dropping a loop on top of a loop, and there was no ability to kind of reconstruct it without like bouncing everything out individually or
yeah.
whatever. And you seem to have like struck a really nice happy medium where it's like a production sound and quality with
Mm,
the looping system. Do you feel, because I always talk to my friend about, it'd be great if like instead of it being touch buttons, you could have like foot pedal that was
yeah.
connected to the push or to something like that. So because the amount of times I've like played something on a keyboard or a synth and then gone to record it, press the record on the mouse, and then my fingers have just like not remembered what
Yeah.
they were playing. So like a foot, do you use like foot triggers with it,
No,
or
no, I haven't actually, but I know people who do to control like playback with Ableton Live. Um, but no, I haven't. And I think so. Some of the experiments I've done with a friend of mine called Laura Lee, and so she does have foot pedal loops going on, and then I've been at the push station, so like triggering the parts, but also recording in her parts and her responding, and then sometimes I can take her parts and then start to process what she's just recorded in push, and then it turns into this like mad, like nobody knows what sound is coming from what. I don't know what I'm doing in that recording, whether it's me or Laura, and vice versa. So you're I think the area of interest with that is turning it into a performance. Basically, it's like bringing the performance back into the tools, which I think has been maybe lacking in my personal like practice, like the music I've been making.
Hmm.
Yeah, no, to your point, yeah, the foot pedals stuff would be really interesting. I guess I'm just sort of much more like, I enjoy the fact that you do have those controls on the push, and you tend to be much more extreme when you're using that than you ever would with a plugin. It's like I would never go 100% wet on a delay, but just like you would with an analog pedal, you would naturally go to those extremes. Whereas if I don't have push or a MIDI controller and I'm just using the mouse, I probably would be a lot less extreme with the sound processing, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
Like
that's
it needs to
cool.
be hands-on for me. But having said that, I'm used to doing loads of foot switch stuff. I guess I've just brought my pedal board up is what I'm doing. It's like it's not on the floor anymore. It's on the desk, and it's become a hands-on thing rather than just stomping on it.
Yeah. Have you spoken to Ableton about what you're doing with it? Do you have contact with them?
Yeah, I've been talking to Jack Laidlaw from Ableton. I've done a couple of things with them connected to some of the again, like the university stuff that I'm doing, and where I'm very interested in how push, and actually the move, which is much more accessible than the push, because the push, although the push 2 is now like actually quite affordable, the push 3 is really expensive. I think I'm right in saying this. I don't think it's an easy bit of gear to like just pick up and play. Although it's intuitive, but my 5-year-old can pick up the move and just like make it work, and it lights up, and it's very simple. And so yeah, I'm mostly with Ableton. I'm mostly like in discussions with how that can be used in education, music production, education, and I suppose particularly of interest is that area of like getting girls into tech, because from my experience working in this university that I've been working in, like there's still an incredibly low female cohort, and certainly difficult to find tutors in the studio as well who aren't just of one particular set. So yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm interested in how Ableton and something as, I mean, I love Ableton. I've been using Ableton for years and years and years. Is Ableton and then Pro Tools for me. Like I think there's something really special about how accessible that can be for not just young girls, but for people who don't have access to technology. Because you forget that even having a laptop these days is quite an expensive, hefty investment that a lot of young people just don't have access to.
Yeah. A few about a year or two ago, I interviewed a girl called Emma who runs a thing called Producer Girls. And it
Mm,
was exactly what you're saying. It was getting groups of girls in a room in front of the DAW and showing them how easy it was to just throw a beat together and have fun.
yeah,
Yeah, I could put you in touch with Emma. She's an amazing
yeah,
person. I
cool.
don't know if she's still doing Producer Girls, but she is an amazing person on her own. She's like ridiculously funny,
Yeah,
as well as being quite a driven
cool.
producer and yeah, a talented DJ as well. So yeah, that might
Nice.
be worth putting you in touch with
Yeah,
her.
cool.
Yeah, you mentioned Bat for Lashes there, Natasha Khan, her band. Yeah, it was interesting to hear you talking about the how she approached touring, like when you
Mm.
first joined her, that she was ceremonious about maybe setting up the situation in a way.
Are you talking about the Stones?
Yeah, doing some kind of ritual.
I don't think it was quite as pagan sounding as that, but
Okay, I've my imagination has gone wild.
no, I think no. The funny thing about, yeah, Natasha, and actually, I was talking about that this morning, is how I went from an incredibly masculine environment to the complete opposite, where it's full of Natasha is full of this, yeah, magical, um, feminine inspiration, um, which sort of taps into, like, for me, someone like Kate Bush, who's that big sort of matriarchal um, figure. And I found it very difficult at first to soften on the road, because it was very, like, quite an edgy environment, I would say. Then you had to be quite tough. And I felt like, um and this is I'm not saying this is anyone's fault, really. I think it was just the culture of the time. Like, to be an emotional woman on a tour bus would have been, like, not cool. And whenever I had tour wobbles, I mean, everyone's much more aware of mental health, the toll on your mental health that touring can take. And when I
Mm.
think about the amount of touring that Ash did, I mean, it was insane. It was absolutely ridiculous. We never stopped. Tours were months long. I was in a van in America for months and months and months, and it's hard work. You were often exhausted. Um, in the days before phones and WhatsApp and FaceTime, when you were away, you were gone. I had no contact with friends and family, and that was your world. That was your bubble. You were in it, and I think coming out of that, I found it very difficult to get rid of all that stuff. And when I did have a wobble on tour, I would very privately go into a toilet and cry, or stay in my hotel room. And I never really was able to reach out to anyone and say, I'm really struggling at the moment. So I found the environment of moving into session world in my 30s, which Bat Flashes was one of the first session gigs, and then it was a succession of female artists, so Katie Tunstell, Birdy, um,
Mm.
and a few others, mostly like female led, and with female tour managers, and it was just a very different environment. And yeah, so I think at first I found it a little bit like, whoa, this is you know, what the fuck is this? But but I very much embrace it now. And the last bit of touring, so me and Natasha had kids basically at the same time. So the
Oh,
last
that's nice.
touring, yeah, so we've both got 5-year-olds, and the last bit of touring that we did was scheduled around, it was quite like, on the weekends and stuff. But there's just it's so it's crazy. It was a crazy experience, and now I'm 46. I really appreciate, and I really need to have people around me on tour who understand the ups and downs
Absolutely.
of it all. Um, but yeah, it was a big culture shift, which all ties into like there's so many programs at the moment. Like looking back at the 90s, like I just watched the Girl Bands Forever, and then I
Oh,
saw
my friend was watching that. Yeah.
it's really interesting. And then I watched the Loaded documentary. Like looking back at the 90s of like this, it was an incredible time for the music industry. And I was 16 when Britpop was exploding, and there are venues and rehearsal spaces galore in London, and it does very much feel like that has changed so much. But I think at the same time, it was like a time of great excess, and I think
Mm.
somewhere along the line, I did get a little bit lost amongst all of that. Um, and so, yeah,
Yeah, because you joined Ash how old were you when you joined Ash?
I was 18.
18. Yeah, and quite soon, you played like the V Festival within a couple of weeks, right? And
Yeah, V97
yeah,
was like, yeah, within weeks, probably less than weeks, really, of joining. Yeah, I did my A levels and then just joined, and um, I I'd never been on a plane before. I'd only ever been on like a school trip to Belgium. um, that was the only time I'd really left the country. So yeah, I was on the first time on the plane. We flew to Dublin and did a gig with U2,
wow.
which was like my first time on a plane. And then boosh, you're on stage with Next to the Edge and Bono, and it was completely like mind blowing. And then I travelled the world several times over. And yeah, I mean, it was an incredible experience. And um, coming down from that was a bit nuts, really. So actually,
It
sort of
sounds
coming
like
out
it.
of
Yeah.
coming out of that fuzz, the Bat for Lashes tour was the first thing that I did as a session player. Wicked album. And yeah, it was the first place that I really felt like, wow, that I felt like it was a safe space. And I was able to really sort of explore not only like musically, but like, to just sort of like have time to reflect on, what the fuck's just happened, and where am I?
Yeah, I can appreciate that being a challenging situation I mean, as a young person, obviously it's an amazing thing to be on stage, to play
Mm,
festivals and play with U2 and stuff. But I do get totally the male dominated environment in a touring world for a girl who's a teenager. Like I can see the challenges there, and especially like you said about in the 90s, there was like a big drinking and kind of drug culture. And yeah,
yeah,
I remember Loaded Magazine and all those kind of things. And there's some like really gratuitous things that they'd have as headlines, or like crazy things that were totally unacceptable now.
yeah.
Like it's a heck of a world to kind of to drop yourself in. Like you had toured before, you were with the band Night Nurse prior, so
Well, I hadn't really toured. I just
I
did like
hadn't. Okay.
London gigs. I did one gig in Chelmsford, but that was it. We were a London-based band, and we would play several times a week, or like every Friday, Saturday, and I'd rehearse, and we rehearsed at this place called the Fortress, which was in Angel. And so I would get, I grew up in Chiswick, West London, and I would get the train with my enormous guitar from Chiswick down to the Barbican, and then I'd walk from the Barbican down to Angel, and rehearse. But you would walk into the cafe, and there was like Elastica, Primal Scream, Pulp had a studio there, like all these idols of mine, because I was obsessed with the Enemy and Melody Maker. And I had posters of all these people, and Ash were also one of the. I did have a poster of Girl from Mars, I think it was, or Goldfinger. And they were there as well. And that's actually how I met Tim. And then I would go to school the next day. So it was like a boom. You're in London, and everything was just there. So that was my introduction to playing. But yeah, I was playing, I was gigging, but it wasn't until I joined Ash that I left the country properly, and we did like a 8-week tour of Europe and all. Then we went. Actually, one of the first things we did when I was 19, we did the Big Day Out festival in Australia, and flew to Australia, Japan, and like just fucking craziness. And I mean, it was absolutely amazing. And of course, when you're young, you don't quite understand the privilege of touring the world either. It's not until I did lots of session work later in life that I was like, wow, it's not everything is ever not everything is the same budget. You tour with an artist like Birdy, and you get lovely tour buses and hotel rooms, and it feels nice. But a lot of my time is spent in vans, and doing it in a sort of very all for one for all sort of mentality. And that's also part of the joy of touring, if you're with people that you get on with. If you're not with people you get on with, and you're in a van, then it can really be like horrible. So a massive part of touring and is making sure that you're with the right team. So yeah, a big part of being in my 30s was like, oh, I really like these people, and everyone's really nice, and it's fun rather than sort of messy drinking. It was fun drinking. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I definitely know what you mean. Yeah.
I didn't need to be throwing up every single morning. It was just a lot more measured,
Yeah, well, there is that famous track on the end of the first Ash album, isn't there? Sick Party, where they come back from a hotel and they're just sick everywhere. And that was probably one of the earliest secret tracks on an album. That was like, oh, you've got to hear this. It's so funny. It's on the end of you have to listen for like 13 minutes extra on the CD. So yeah, I mean, there was clearly a drinking culture going on.
Drinking culture, but then also. I was listening to a Caitlin Moran interview this morning. She talks about when she started writing for the Melody Maker, and I think she was 15. She was incredibly young, and that there was a culture of takedowns, of being like just horrible about other bands. And I do remember doing interviews with some of those journalists, and it was just all about slagging off people. Like there was a big Ash and Westlife. And we burned a load of Westlife CDs, and Feuds, Top Loader are shit, and like slagging people off, and you kind of, again, I think that is a very masculine world as well, and and you end up saying things because also in the time of Oasis, of like just being a bit of a cunt was seen to be like a badge of honor.
Quite cool. And,
and I think I really can't relate to that these days, of course, because everyone grows up and everyone changes. I'm sure none of the boys, I'm sure Tim wouldn't either, but I think you do get sucked into that. The culture at the time was takedowns, because pop and rock was so close. You would do CD UK with Spice Girls or Sugar Babes. We did the Smash Hits Awards. This was mental. Or you would do Top of the Pops, and you would have Pulp Ash, Sugar Babes, All Saints, whatever. So that those worlds was actually closely enmeshed at the time, and so you were able to slag off someone and then probably bump into them backstage, and it's like incredibly awkward. And but you just do what you think people want to hear. I really desperately wanted to fit in, and I was so young. Like I didn't really have any sense of self, or I didn't really know what my opinion was. Also, they'd already, they went to school together. They were best mates. They were Northern Irish. They'd already toured the world and had a number one record. I was 2 years younger than them. I was from London. I was from a very different place, I think, emotionally, everything. And I was trying to fit in with them because I was the new girl, and I just wanted to sort of, I didn't want to stick out in any way. And as my time in Ash progressed, it sort of became more and more challenging, but I started to find myself a lot more, and probably, it became harder to fit in, I think. Not, I mean, nobody has asked me to sort of moan about any of this stuff. So I'm wary that, like, as much as it was difficult and completely insane, I look back on it and think, wow, it was only 8 years really of my life, and I've done a lot more since then, but it is quite defining. It's a defining era in my life, and a lot happened in it, and a lot of wonderful, amazing things happened as well as like mad shit.
I can appreciate that, and it's fair to say they were young too. Like their song "Jack Names the Planets" was like a hit song when they were like doing their GCSEs or something. So they weren't. It wasn't like they were. Yeah, like it was. You were all kind of super young.
Well, their first record, so it was called 1977, which was like at the time a fuck you of like, this is when we were born. But I was like, I'm 79. I'm even cooler than you. Like even younger than them. Turning,
like the promo for Nuclear Sounds when it came out. I remember like how much budget was behind that, because it was like it was advertised on TV, and they kept putting like short adverts, like 5 or 10-second adverts that were just. I can't remember what was the lead single off that album. It was just that song.
Jesus Says, maybe.
It was the other one with the scratching on it.
Oh, Numbskull.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So that one, I just remember the promo campaign for that album was insane. Like it was everywhere, like when I see the album cover, it's like it's burnt into my retinas. I remember how much they pushed that album.
I remember the main memory of that is going to New York for a photo shoot. I can't quite remember what year this was now, how long this was into me joining, but it was quite soon. I think we went to New York. It's my first time in America, and I remember being just hit by the jet lag, and also completely taken out by the size of the shots. And just I spent a lot of that time just like I was jet lagged, and I was sort of hungover. And then we did this photo shoot in like New York summer. Yeah, really, like, again, another moment for me of like, I'm in New York. Oh, this is incredible. I'm doing a photo shoot, and we made videos for my first time really making videos and doing that whole promo campaign. But the thing with that album was that it's quite an odd album, really. You wouldn't say that Numbskull or Jesus Says were like your typical hit single, Ash single. They were not like Shining Light or Girl from Mars. They were like, it was different. And although I think that was a big spend, that record was seen to be at the time like a bit of a failure comparatively to their previous number one record. So again, that was another disconnect, because for me, I was like, this is all amazing. And for them, they were like, oh, this is, I think Tim was struggling with writer's block, and they were just on a different part of the timeline than I was on. So there was always a little bit of like disconnect.
Yeah, a tough album to follow up. 1977 is such
Yeah.
a it was so such an iconic moment.
There's some beautiful songs like I'm Aphrodite and the other one. I can't remember its name. Some of the more like Low Ebb, I think, is a beautiful song. Some of the more like downbeat ones I think are actually gorgeous, and I like the sound of that record. It's just it didn't have those sort of banging pop singles that they had in abundance on 1977.
Yeah. But you were with them for 8 years, and I think you started to work. You were working on your own material
Yeah,
while with them.
yeah.
And yeah, how did it feel? How did it feel to kind of be free from that and to be doing your own thing when
Mm.
that all came to a head?
I think it was good to start with. I did Grey Will Fade whilst I was still with them, and released it on their manager's label. And so that all felt quite sort of under the same umbrella, under the same roof, really. It didn't feel like a sort of scary step out of the village, of the Ash village. And that got a good response. But then, it's a completely different thing when you then leave a band and you do the next thing, and then you put a band together, and then you're touring as yourself or doing live gigs as yourself. And I didn't really think about it. I just did it. And the mistake that I made, really, which is like a cliche as old as time, is I just didn't think about the financial side of things. So I was just going to Italy and I was recording, and I think the logic was Grey Will Fade sold a certain amount, and the next one will sell a little bit more, and then I'll do some gigs. But it really coincided at the time where people stopped buying records, and MP3 sharing became just normal, and sort of really went to town on printing up 1,000,000 7-inch vinyls with B-sides, and did videos, and went back to Italy and recorded, and I kind of did. I think I did actually lose my mind a little bit.
Totally understandable.
And then put a record out that I think is imperfect. I wish it was. There are things about it that I really like, and there are things about it that I really don't like. And I'm talking about the Deep Blue, and I think just kind of struggled to really get my life together, because I was in a relationship with Edgar Wright for about 4 years, just when he was making Shaun of the Dead, and then he was making Hot Fuzz, and Edgar's trajectory was going on the up, and it was very much like a culture of I talked about this with someone else, and it was. I haven't really thought about it, but I think at some point I sort of realized, well, I can't just be touring and getting fucked up forever. Edgar's like a very focused workaholic, and so I took that from him. And when we were like a good team in that, so I'm going to make my records, you make your films. And then when that sort of fell apart at the end of making the Deep Blue, it was just very difficult for me to make sense of everything, and I did really struggle for a few years with like, what am I doing? Where am I going? And it wasn't until I found that session work to, I think maybe the level of touring that we did just really do a number on me, because you're so addicted to the adrenaline, addicted to the not just the performance, but the team and the family, and for that to just disappear, and then you're on your own, and then you have to construct your own family. Because I joined a family that was already there. It was like all the tour manager, when you go on tour, there's like 10 other people there, grown
Yeah,
up.
the tech people, the MD,
Yeah, and they are your family.
TM.
And I was with them from 18 up to 26, um and they just weren't there anymore, and then you have to make your own family from scratch, and I think I just massively underestimated how hard that would be. um and uh and then just lost a lot of money making that second record, The Deep Blue, that I then needed to find this alternative career as a session player, which is is not a terrible alternative plan at all. And then really my biggest challenge has been, how can the session work for other artists feed into my solo work in a way where it doesn't completely eat it. So when I did my third record, New Worlds, I was on tour with Bat for Lashes whilst that was coming out. And then I made True Love in between Katie and being on tour with Birdy. So when I put True Love out, I was on tour with Birdy. Very clearly remember, getting the reviews through whilst I was on tour with her. But the trade-off has been, like, I've never really been able to sort of properly put my own material out on the road. Part of me kind of thinks that that's been secretly what I quite like. I don't know. Maybe I should. That's something that I need to probably talk to a therapist about. Because I kind of like, maybe I think my happy place really is in a band. Although I do have this drive to just release my own music and write music, and even though I haven't, I'm coming dangerously close to not having done anything put anything out for almost 10 years. But that's life at the moment. But I do want to, I have made a lot of music in the last 10 years. I've definitely got an album, but I think putting an album out and doing gigs just feels like an enormous effort. Do you know what I mean? So I
Absolutely.
massively waffled then.
No, that was great. No, I've just got like three different places to possibly go after this from what you're saying. Like, I guess my initial thought is like, it's kind of good. Your students must benefit so much from some of your experiences,
Mm,
right? When you're explaining financial things to
yeah.
them.
Yes, because that stuff is still relevant, if not more problematic than ever, because you cannot go on tour at a starter level and make any money. It's not going to happen. Um, and I think students these days, well, the students that I've talked to, there's a much more open mindedness towards multidisciplinary avenues, because everything, like audio, is inextricably linked to video or visuals. And so they're very, like, I have an amazing drummer who's also taught himself how to do visuals for artists. So he's not only drumming with bands, he's designing their stage visuals, he's doing their
Oh,
artwork,
cool. Oh,
being
yeah.
by Ableton and Max for Live, and there's just a sort of general open-mindedness of like, well, I'm probably not just going to be this one thing. They understand that you don't really need to tell them. But when I left Ash, it was very much like, I am going to be a solo artist now, and I think the reality of how tough that was to sustain, I did have to then think, oh, actually, no, I'm going to have to do this other work as a session player to keep this stuff going. Like, I can't do it all on my own. And that has led me to do all sorts of different stuff. I mean,
Mm.
I've done so many different things just to to keep my art alive. I have done a variety of different things and skills. And I think, yeah, for students to just start at that base level of like, you know what, you're an amazing guitarist, but it would be, you know, what would be really helpful is if you could program Ableton Live and do backing tracks as well, so that when you go to an audition, um, you're the person that they're going to go for, because you can play really well, but you can also do these other things. Um, and they're totally open to that, and they're on it already.
That's really cool. Yeah, I think so from my own personal experience in education, I studied music technology, and the only thing I really came away with was this extra class of work of learning Max MSP on a Monday evening, which was totally voluntary. And it was like, out of the 20 people who are on my course, only like 2 or 3 did it.
Yeah.
But like, it was so beneficial, and I've been making Max for Live patches since then for like,
Yeah.
I don't know, 20, well, Max MSP first and then Max for Live. So yeah, I think yeah, those kind of strings to your bow things for your students, like you say, where they can, you need, if you can have production as well, it's hugely beneficial just
Yeah.
than on the instrument.
Yeah, I mean, I do. It's sort of one of my areas of interest. I would say is how performance and production are kind of linked for me, anyway. Um, and you know that a certain amount of knowledge or door skills is really important. And you know, there is still a lot of vocalists on a performance course who are like, why do I need to learn this stuff? Um, and then you see them constantly relying on other people to like uh, to work with, because you know it's hard to find like real. I think finding your team. I mean, if there's anything that I'm had experience of, is like finding your team is takes a long time, unless you're really lucky and your team is at university, because that is a great where you're in a building full of young creatives who are desperate to collaborate. Um, but it's taken me a very long time to find reliable people whose taste I implicitly trust. Um,
Mm,
so like finding those collaborators, um, and understanding what you stand for and what you like and what you don't like, and it's easier said than done. Some people just naturally have that from day one, and I feel like for me, it's annoyingly, I'm like, okay, now I fucking understand what I want and what I'm going for, and I know who I want to work with. I know who I want to collaborate with. My challenge at the moment is that my time is just I don't know. I don't know where my time's gone, but it's very difficult to prioritize that sometimes. But if you're a student, you know, in theory you've got all the time in the world. But however, the caveat for that is that a lot of these students and a lot of young people in London, this is a London centric perspective, but they are also juggling multiple jobs. It's difficult for them to even come into university some days because travel is expensive. Some of them are carers, young carers. Some of them have kids, um, and need to think about childcare. So I do feel there's also a lot of barriers that a lot of these students have, which is probably, you know, we have a lot of resources, but it's not always easy for them to have access to this stuff. So that's another thing that I'm very wary of how can we make music and technology and production and performance more accessible in a time where venues are disappearing, rehearsal spaces are disappearing, everything's fucking expensive, everything.
mm.
And it can feel very like daunting, I think. So one of my biggest tasks is to remove that fear. But they're very resilient, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was speaking to a friend of mine who's got kids, and I was like, wow, it's like a tough world for kids right now. There's like, it's a lot of different thing. Well, I mean, it's obviously going to be different from when I grew up, like,
Mm.
but like, seeing it. And she said, well, they don't know any different. they're kind of cool with it because this is just what they know, and it really did reassure me. I was like, oh yeah, like they're not comparing it to like the 80s like I am. They're
Yeah.
comparing it to like now, and that's, this is what it is. So yeah, it was quite a heartening thing because I do sometimes worry about youth and about the pressures on them and things like that. But yeah, a friend of mine who's a mother was like, this is all they know.
Yeah, it's true. And I think, you could see some of the COVID generation that I was teaching the last couple of years, and you could see how that impacted their confidence.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, that's tough. I think in your formative years, that kind of thing is a bit crazy. I mean, in any whatever year you're in, it's crazy. But when you need, those sort of, those formative years, the COVID, I think, is a challenge. That's a good point.
But also they're as much as they are called digital natives, they have a very healthy amount of skepticism when it comes to AI and digital tools. And there's still like a very heartening appreciation for analog, and they very much want to put the human into their music. So
Mm.
there is a sort of assumption that they're all, technical whiz kids, but in my experience, then they're actually not at all. It's quite interesting. Like even down to sending an email or constructing an email. It's not they're phone people. They're not laptop people. They're phone people,
Mm.
and that's a very different way of consuming information, but also storing information. Because I'm sort of saying, giving them information, and I'm like, so where are you writing this down? Where? And they're sort of on their phones, oh, it's on notes. And I'm like, yeah, but where? And then where does it go? No, for me, it's like you put a folder on your desktop, you put it into Padlet, or you put it like, where are you keeping this
Or is
information?
it congregated?
Yeah, it's
Is
kind of
it
like,
all?
it's fascinating, really. They don't really. I mean, I'm saying they, like I'm speaking for this whole generation. I'm just talking about the sort of the students that I'm working with,
Mm.
of like, let's not assume that they're all um, obsessed with technology, because actually there is a healthy amount of rejection of technology, and a great distrust of AI. That, as there's so much talk about Chat GPT and being used for university assessments, and yes, that is absolutely true. But they that's not to say that they like it. A lot of them really don't like it and wouldn't ever use it. So it's interesting. It's interesting where they're at. Like it's almost gone to the point now where they're rejecting
That's good.
that side of
That's
it.
that's good to hear.
Yeah, and the music they're making really is elevating the human imperfection, and I think that's reflected in music out there at the moment. That's like that I'm listening to, or that they're listening to, is that this idea of perfection, and especially digital perfection and AI perfection, is not really an area of interest. It's not a fertile creative area for them at all.
Yeah, and it's not like it's not a satisfying interaction that you'd have with writing a song and producing a song yourself, is it? The sense of satisfaction is kind of empty with using those platforms.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's not. I think it's interesting to explore, but I think when it comes to their own music, it's. I think it's really interesting and surprising how much of it is actually um, guitar. Like some of it is traditional, but you think of someone like Bon Iver, who is working in that sort of acoustic, um, organic field, but also integrating OP1 and fucking up samples, using tape, but in really interesting ways that is imperfect and distorted, nasty. And I think that's what excites me about like talking to them about these artists, of like, yeah, but you know, it's not all just organic. You can involve electronics, like someone like Bjork. I mean, Bjork is like one of the richest areas of research, and then what a gift to tutors or students who want to learn about like the creative process, because she comes at it like a scientist, and the way that she breaks down like her podcast series, breaking down each album and the influences and the concepts, I mean, it's fascinating. And so that like you can have technology and bring the human into the machine. um I think that's like everyone accepts that that's the way it should be. um so anyway, to your point, yeah, I definitely feel like uh I like to yeah, I like to sort of taps into the session work, you know. I like to feel helpful. Because I'm, you know, I'm needy. I like to feel of use, you know, and I think that's a perfect place to be like, you know, my experience in the music industry, albeit in a completely different time, um,
Definitely. Oh,
that is valuable. I had one band actually, so I was teaching on the performance program, and then so a band has come out of that. They're called the Sisters of Hysteria.
oh, cool.
And they're sort of really into like 90s whole songs and PJ Harvey. So they do like covers of that era, but they've started to write their own music. Anyway, they came to me with a band problem, you know. It's like to do with like, I probably shouldn't say actually, but anyway, it was a band.
It's a personal, some
Yeah, I was
interpersonal
like,
relationship.
yeah, and I just thought, God, the amount of times I've dealt with this sort of scenario. So actually, it's not a technical thing. It's actually a lot of this is like navigating personal relationships and communication, which is like
Yeah.
most valuable part of education, really. And you know, I've also been reading about how you will use, you know, it's just because you have a degree is that doesn't mean you're going to get a guaranteed job, and that's certainly the case with music. But in all areas, and how CVs are sort of being mass produced with this AI, and so everything's sort of the personality has sort of been removed.
Mm.
Everyone's trying to present themselves in this sort of formatted way, and so the most valuable thing that you can have is actually a personality and be an individual, and face to face discussion. It will be held at a higher premium, I think, than anything else for these kids. So I think it's actually maybe coming more full circle away from this digital interface into like, because technology is now making everything on a level playing field, it's harder and harder for anyone to sort of stand out, and for personalities to come through. So everything has to be in your face. It's almost going back to that old school networking, like just got to get in people's faces and talk to them, and be you.
There is a real value to that meeting in real life thing, and yeah, there's a huge benefit to that. This podcast was supposed to all be done face to face, and then COVID happened, and then I started to email people who are in different countries and got a bit more popular, so it kind of worked out. But yeah, the face to face stuff is so important. Yeah, that's cool. What's the name of the band again, so people can check them out?
Sisters of Hysteria.
Sisters of Hysteria. Cool. That's great. There's a few things I want to mention, just drop into,
Yeah.
which first of all is that on the financial side of things, the next episode I'm recording is with Damien Harris, who runs Skint Records,
Okay.
whose big artist was Fatboy Slim on his label, but there were loads of other artists as well. And there's a really great story that he's told, where they spent £60,000 on one of his music videos. He's called Midfield General, is his artist, and he's like, it's the worst music video ever, and we made this stupid mistake, and we spent £60,000 on this music video. And you can watch it. He's in a parachute and he's stuck in a tree, and there's a dog and a few dogs that save him by piling up some crates below him. And it's just a great example of what you mentioned about the financial outlay, that you kind
Yeah,
of get you kind of go along with it, and then years down the line look back and go, wow, that was what
yeah,
happened there.
yeah. So
We didn't mitigate for that.
there's a guy called Elijah. Have you heard of Elijah? He does those yellow squares on Instagram. He's like a DJ, musician, academic, and he talks a lot about DJ culture, and but then also how the obsession with these like astronomical numbers, like millions of Spotify streams, and sort of is completely meaningless, and that
It is really, yeah.
his whole thing is really about like bringing it back down to this sort of sense of community, what's elevating your like localizing everything, because everything became incredibly just maximalized. So it's like, how can you like bring it down to like, actually the most important connection is 5 people in a room, every one of those leaving and then buying something because you've had a much more profound personal connection and impact. And that's more meaningful than having 1,000 streams or 5,000 or 5 million or whatever. And so I'm really inspired by Elijah, and he's written a book. He's put a book out of compiling all of his sort of Instagram yellow
Oh,
square.
cool.
Yes, I
Check it out.
recommend you check him out.
Is he have a surname, or will everyone just find him with
Yeah,
Elijah?
yeah, it's ELI1AH on
Okay.
Instagram. Um,
1AH. Cool. Yeah. And I also wanted to mention there's another book called Touring and Mental Health,
yeah, I know that book.
which was written by the Music Industry Therapist Collective. And I guess, it would be interesting to ask literally the world's most generic question to you, which
Sure.
is if you met somebody who is 18 and they were going to go on tour with a band such as Ash, not necessarily Ash, but
Yeah.
what would be your like prerequisites to like optimize that situation?
Um,
Or what would you say to a girl who would be doing that kind of tour at the age of 18?
oh, um, I think the difference with me at 18 was using your voice and having the confidence to communicate, and a lot of 18-year-olds that I've talked to really are so much more together and know their own mind. However, that is absolutely not the case for everyone. So
Hmm.
I think it's so important to have at least one person with you that is your buddy.
Yeah.
Um, you need that, and although there was a lot of people in the Ash entourage on the whole, I don't think I really had anyone that I could go to and be like, God, you know what, I'm really freaking out, or I'm really nervous about this gig, or
Hmm.
you talk about periods. I mean, when I was on tour, there wasn't even toilet paper on the tour bus, and I had to go to the tour bus driver. I'm like, oh, can I have some toilet paper? Because you're not allowed to do a number 2 in the toilet. So
Hmm.
when you're doing a wee, the boys don't have to have toilet paper. And I was like, I need toilet paper. And then, God forbid you get your period, because the bus driver washes the sheets and changes the sheets. Bus driver is always like, always a man. So it's just a lot about it is like, you just need a connection with someone that you can go to in case you encounter any difficult moments. Even if you've got like, also like trusting your intuition is so important, because the amount of dodgy
Hmm.
situations I sort of found myself in, and like having intuition of like I'm uncomfortable with this person or in this space, and I'm going to remove myself, or I'm uncomfortable in this conversation. Being able to speak it is actually difficult in some.
Yeah, like
I don't want to be the person, especially as the only woman, because then you get labeled the emotional woman. You don't want to be the one telling them off in a sort of way, but then also they do quite like you to be the mother hen making everyone a cup of tea.
right, yeah.
It's a difficult
Really
balance, really.
conflicted.
Which I was never going to be that at the age of 18. So
Yeah, I think even sorry, go on.
no. I just think like if you don't have that confidence, which is very hard to have unless you're incredibly well brought up, um, I did not have that sort of childhood where I would go into a situation and have the confidence to use my voice. It took me a long, long time to develop that, um, and I think if you're not there, you need, a chaperone sounds very old fashioned, but really you need someone there if you are young who you're going to be able to sort of communicate with. So I think my advice would
Yeah.
be, like, if you don't have that, figure out some sort of lifeline. Who's going to be your buddy at the end of the phone? Which again, that's different now. I didn't have that when I went on tour. If I wanted to call home, I had to go to a service station, buy a phone card, and then go to find a phone in the middle of the street. And when you're touring America, good luck finding that.
Mm.
So I didn't really have that. But if you don't have that around you, then make sure you've got a WhatsApp group with a support system. You need a support system, is what I'm trying to say.
Definitely, definitely. I can totally appreciate that. And I can imagine, I mean, I've learned as a sort of 40, in my mid 40s, like how to deflect someone who's being aggressive.
Mm,
Like I know how to do that now.
yeah.
Someone on the underground a few weeks ago was really aggressive with me for no reason. And I retained a really low heart rate.
Mm,
And I was
mm,
just basically reassuring this person and
yeah.
not putting up obstacles to them. But I know when I was younger and when we're all younger, you don't often know how to deflect like
Mm.
aggression or deflect someone coming onto you, or
I mean,
any of those things. You don't know how to deal with it. And
yeah,
sometimes if someone's really awkward or they're really aggressive with you, you can imagine that you are the awkward one and I'm feeling awkward because of me. And it's
yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah.
it's really hard to identify. I think you only realize, or I only realized in my later years, that yeah, sometimes yeah, it's just reading the situation takes time, doesn't it?
It does take time, but I do think things might have changed slightly. But I do think on the whole, it's still a uh, a dicey place to be. So, which is why I think if you can just be in a band with your friends,
Hmm.
be in a band with your mates, have a good time, and then you are a unit. You're stronger as a whole, and you can look out for each other. And that I think really it's like it's all about building that. It's building that network. It's building that team that I always come back to. Is like find your people, find them now as soon as possible. It's because it's hard to do it when you're older, I think. Um, but at that age, it's like get on the same team as the people that you like quickly.
Hmm. When you mentioned you said you like being in a band, or that's your like your favorite place is to
Mm.
be in a band. It totally made me think of NZCA Lines,
Oh yeah.
that you were in with Michael Lovett and Sarah Sausages.
Yes, love Sarah sausages. Yeah,
Yeah, that was a great. I mean, that stuff was awesome. It was so good to
yeah,
see you play live, and yeah,
yeah.
it was so many great songs between you three.
Yeah, that was cool. It's so funny because Sarah's now, you know, she's had kids. Michael's had kids. I've had kids. So it's kind of, yeah. I feel like it's so interesting, like what happens to people's lives, because that was a really special time. It really was. Um, I loved Michael's music. I loved that album in particular. And then Michael and I wrote some songs for my album True Love, and he produced that as well. Yeah, I love Michael very much.
You
Um,
played the Blue Dot Festival as well, did you?
okay.
I think NZCA Lines did anyway. I don't know, but I remember.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Sorry, my memory for actual places and gigs is terrible. But I think the interesting with my thing with Michael was like his setup. I think was for like the first three piece that I'd really. Well, I actually did a three piece with when I was doing gigs with New Worlds, which is my third solo album, which I loved, and I went out with Alex Thomas on drums and Andy Norton was playing bass. Alex Thomas is fucking one of the greatest drummers of all time, and that was a really cool. But that was just guitars, bass, drums. But with Michael, there's Ableton going on. He's got all these beautiful synths, and we had everything was like sort of MIDI linked as well. And then of course Sarah's got her electronic drum set up and SPDS pads, and so that was kind of like my first hybrid. Even though Back for Lashes was like that, like as a nice concise triangle of a three piece, I felt it worked really really well, and I sort of
definitely.
was very inspired by that time of working with Michael, and took a lot of those sounds forwards. And in fact, I was just talking to Michael about bringing him in to do a masterclass on how he uses the MPC to make beats, but then he also integrates it with electronic music production in a really cool way. He's just cool. He's got great taste, and he lives in that wonky pop world that I just absolutely love.
Yeah, he tours with the Metronomy, doesn't he?
Yeah,
Plays guitar with Metronomy, and Sarah's played with like Harry Styles
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
all kinds of other people. There is a great video of Michael. I think he's breaking down Two Heart, like how Two Hearts
Mm,
came together. It's a
yeah,
really good. I think it's like a Future Music video,
yeah.
and he shows like just ad libbing tones of vocal to the parts and just like mumbling through it and then eventually coming to it. Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, I really love that sound. And I think a lot of your solo work as Silvertang, when like this synth work that you do is kind of
Yeah.
beautiful. It kind of really feels like it's your kind of
Mm,
sound, that the synth world. I don't know if I'm just putting that on you, but that's from my
mm. No, I like
perspective.
that. Thank you. I think we shared a love of sci-fi melancholy, I think. Yeah, we a lot of our influences really overlapped, which is sort of why we went on to work on True Love, which was like the whole narrative of that was like a heartbroken alien. um,
Mm.
and with the synth stuff, yeah, it's interesting because I did a reissue of Grey will Fade, which was my first record, and which is very very pop punk guitar um, infused. I suppose like a lot of Ash influence, but also I was really obsessed with XTC and had some sort of Bowie guitar um, influences as well.
Mm.
But I did progressively become much more synth heavy, and some people, I mean, you always get, oh, I loved your first record, and that's my favorite record, and there's always, every time someone says that, of course you're like, oh well, that's great, but there's always a part of you that's like, I've done 4 other records since. um yeah, sometimes there's a feeling of like, which was kind of why I'm interested in the guitar at the moment. It's like, you start in a particular space, which is like for me when I started, it was very like um Smashing Pumpkins, Sonic Youth, that sort of alternative rock. And then with Ash it was very like pop punk, super melodic. And then sort of moving through my solo records, becoming like increasingly probably more like it's not really electronics, the wrong word for it really. Incorporating less studio, having less resources to go into the studio and becoming much more of a self-producing artist, I think naturally leads you towards more electronic sounds anyway.
True.
So I think that's just what I became. And then I think now I'm more interested in coming back to the guitar. So, I mean, I haven't really played the guitar for a very long time. I'm like, okay, cool. Let's go back to that, but let's now use it. Try to use the guitar in a different way, which I'm finding really interesting. So yeah, so I'm actually not very synthy at the moment. I mean, everything's a phase. So now I'm like, let's go back to the guitar. Let's try and get organic sounds, but like process it in a different way. And what I really want to do, I'm working on it, and I'm sure I will get there. But I am definitely focused on finishing some of the stuff that I've started, which is sort of very much I've used so I did a master's in creative music production, and I used a lot of this stuff as a vehicle to make new music. And there's an album there with a very strong concept that I just need to finish, and then I would love to do some live shows because I just haven't done anything live, and I really, really miss it at the moment. Like when when you're doing it all the time, you're like, I just want a break. And then now I'm at the point where I'm like, I would really love to do something, but much more. I'm sort of interested in being an absolute art nerd at the moment, art with a capital A. I'm just like, let's just do something that doesn't require learning a back catalogue of songs. I just want to actually go out there and just do something much more liberating and free and in the moment, and it will probably inevitably be quite odd. I don't really know what's going to come out of it, but yeah, I've got a good collection of tracks that have just come out of like a wonky early motherhood stage. And actually Natasha Khan wrote like her last record, the last Back from Ashes one, was all about the liminal space you find yourself in between sanity and insanity, day and night, because you're just constantly in this exhausted state of having a child. But actually, if you can harness that, it can be incredibly creative time. So that I've tried to be as productive as I possibly can within these constraints.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what it's like having children, but yeah, I imagine I imagine there's like a huge emotional connection that you have there that I feel like if I had children, I would want to kind of try and express that with music, probably really badly. But there's new neurological things that are happening to you as a mother. I expect that, it's kind of inspiring in other ways, maybe.
Yeah, I think it kind of just inevitably makes you reflect on where you are on your timeline, and that brings up a lot of things to think about. I mean, I do think like this stage of life is infinitely more interesting than being young. and I find myself just much more, I mean, from my perspective, of course. So I just want to hear about people singing about where they're at this stage. I totally, I need to hear other people for reassurance, because this stage of life is actually quite, it's really crazy. It's full on. It's very, very challenging, I think, because you've got like elderly parents. I mean, Caitlin Moran's written a whole book about this, of like being in this age where like you have young children, but then you've also got elderly parents, and then you've also, I find myself in this sort of other world of working, and then I'm also trying to find this creative space, and also trying to keep a relationship alive with a young child and work and wanting to do music. I mean, it's really difficult trying to make it all work.
Mm.
And because it is such a maelstrom, it's very creative. And so this my frustration is like there's so much I want to express and talk about, and just so much is coming up just from being at this stage of life. Uh, as a woman as well, it's rich. I'm very inspired by people like Kim Gordon, who are in their 50s making fucking epic records, and I really do see. Perhaps I couldn't really see it when I was younger, but I can see it now. I can see a space for me as an older woman touring. So I'm trying to keep myself like this is like you know a sort of this like trippy hiatus, really, of like having. I want to be around for Rosa in these early years. I mean, it's super important. And then as she gets older, maybe I can sort of explore going on the road a bit more and being like really embracing the creativity. But at the moment, it's just sort of like it's bubbling, and I'm thinking and trying not to get too like frustrated that I can't completely immerse myself in it all the time. It's just not possible.
Yeah, and I think that kind of practice is really good. That kind of patient
Mm,
bubbling, the
so,
percolating is kind of in some way. I mean, it's a bit like jogging. It's like when I jog, I my brain makes decisions about what I'm going to do in my life choices, but I'm not thinking about them. So I think yeah, in that way, yeah,
yeah.
there's that time of percolating is really 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 good. And also, I mean, I get frustrated in things in my life, but I'm much more forgiving to myself than
Mm,
I ever used to be. And I think that,
yeah.
you have to, when the creativity comes, it comes, and it's there. Yeah, I think when people talk about having writer's block or they're struggling, it's just that it's like the pressure they're putting on themselves a lot,
Mm,
to
mm,
like,
mm.
I'm just not ready. I'm just not feeling the creativity now, so do something else.
Yeah. I think that's why I did the masters because first of all I was able to um it sort of came up, and I just thought, something with structure and a deadline, with a framework is what I need. And it was such I'm so glad I did it. And I mean, there were many moments I was crying with the stress of it all, but I came out with a whole new world of music and ideas. So that was really important. And then just knowing that there is even Kim Deal's record. Oh my God, beautiful! Talking about things about that really resonate with me, like caring for her mother who died, and um, you know, as I say that out loud, that doesn't sound fun, but it's actually I went to see her play live on my birthday this year as well, and just to see women like her and Kim Gordon putting out these like sort of like really aggressive, edgy sounding records, and then touring. My partner went to see My Bloody Valentine last night, and I've known Deb Googe for a long time. Just knowing that she's out there in her 60s fucking rocking it on stage. And so I do feel like there's the time will come for that, and I don't know if I've been that confident that there is space for women to do that until this point.
That's cool. Yeah,
There are some like
that's really
real
good. It
like
definitely is.
trailblazers out there. Yeah, I guess there's always when you think about the old touring road dog, it's a very masculine character, and then that was one of my fears actually when I got to like 38. And somebody said to me on tour, it was like a roadie. Um, he was like, "Oh, you're not going to have kids. You're going to do this forever. Yeah, this is what you're all about." And inside I was like, I really want to have children. And I was like, you don't know me at all. And you know, but then I kind of thought, well, you know, I can have both, you know, but of course the way this works is like one has to come before the other, and yeah, it did make me think, well, you know, it's and then I saw the David Bowie documentary. You know how much I love David Bowie.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all a documentary of him just traveling the world and doing his amazing David Bowie thing. And the whole time I was thinking, he has a son. Like, where is his son in this picture? Tracy Emin talks about this a lot of like, there's no way that she would have been able to have, you know, her art is so all consuming and such a selfish pursuit. And so yeah, it's really got me thinking about like the erasure of women with children in this picture, and you know, to you know, what does it take to have a child and then be the best, very best artist and creative life that you can be. I mean, it does, you do have to sacrifice something, and it either comes from the side of your family or it comes from your art, and that's just a very central question that I'm thinking about all the time at the moment. And there, of course, there is a way for it to be both, but I think I'm just thinking, you know, if you're thinking about extremes, obviously David Bowie is an extreme example of a total icon, as is Tracy Emin, really. But you know, how can I be somewhere in between and make it work? I suppose Kate Bush is another example of someone, you know, but you know, had the almost the luxury is the wrong word, but you know, she was enormously successful and then was able to take 20 years and raise a child and take her sweet time. You know, I get the impression Kate Bush was like she was just sort of she wasn't in a hurry. Sometimes I feel like I am in a hurry. Sometimes I feel like, fucking hell, I haven't done any music for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and I feel like jittery about it.
Mm.
Stresses me out.
Oh, I think everybody feels those things. It's the things we
Yeah,
put on ourselves, isn't it? A little
yeah,
bit, but yeah, I think allowing yourself the time to be creative and to not be creative, yeah,
mm,
that's important. And you've done loads of, I mean, we haven't really touched on any of your soundtrack work,
mm.
and also the amazing array of music videos that you've done over the years. Like if you compare, for example, if we compare like the Bastardo video, which Edgar Wright did,
Mm,
to a Sign video, which
mm.
Gavin Rothery did, like, wow, what an amazing transformation that is to compare those two.
Yeah, that was quite mad. That was a nice little, partnership with Gavin because I he did a short film called The Last Man, that and I was the last woman in the final scene, the last woman on Earth. That was cool. And then yeah, I did the music for that, and yeah, I think I sort of flirted with that world, but actually the world that I've probably been most like have settled in terms of like composition has been music library writing. So I mean, because I'm, you know, trying to constantly keep things spinning so that, you know, I don't ever want to get to the point where I haven't, you know, you feel like it's so hard to start something once you've been away from it for a long time. So I
Yeah,
try
I
to keep
agree.
it going, and the music library composition is a very easy way for me to keep writing and to keep experimenting with certain production techniques. And I'm doing a horror library at the moment, and I fucking love doing that. I find it so satisfying because it's you do it and then a year later you get a statement saying like the weirdest shit that your music's been put on in all over the world. I mean, I really love it. I get such a kick out of it. Um,
And you composing that to visuals or like
no,
how?
so you follow a brief and you know, it will be used for various, you know, so sometimes you do get lots of film score references. Um, so I've done some really cool stuff that actually I would then take elements of and then put them into an actual song that will be released at some point. So I'm kind of, I really love doing that. And at one point I was doing that a lot more than I am now, but that is the one thing that I can sort of keep going, and I find it's just a low pressure space for me to sort of experiment, and it's very rewarding. So I'm
Right.
getting my creative kicks through library composition. um but yeah, I really love film score. I'm incredibly I'm currently obsessed with One O Tricks Point Never. um
Yeah, that stuff's amazing.
yeah, and his latest record, and the Uncut Gems soundtrack that he did, and actually the new Anemone film, the soundtrack to that's fucking beautiful. So I'd say it's probably the music that I listen to the most, actually, is that world. Um, but then I'm also, the thing that I love about the teaching is that it forces you to listen to music. I don't know if I would listen to nearly as much music as I would if I wasn't doing it. And so
Mm.
doing deep dives into the music that they like, and it's incredibly global, which is really fascinating. So yeah, there's a really cool loop between the students feeding to me what they really like, and then I'm sort of feeding back references that they would be able to relate to, and then I'm composing library music, um, which is feeding into my own solo output, because I'm using it to try stuff that I'm also learning from the various guests and people who come into the university. So it is actually a very sort of mind expanding thing at the moment. So I'm hoping that at the outcome of a lot of this thinking, and there is a lot of doing, as much as I'm saying I don't have time, but I would say that they are, to actually craft a song. I have a new appreciation for it, because it really does take time to craft a song. It's easy to create a sonic sketch that has a certain mood, or doesn't have vocals, doesn't have a melody, doesn't have lyrics. I could do that all day long, but to craft a song is a whole other world, really, that just requires so much focus that's the bit that's missing for me at the moment, but
Mm.
it will come.
Yeah, I think it's in there. I think it's there. It's in there somewhere. It's I mean, like I mentioned with Matt, who works with the Chemical Brothers, like "Hey Boy, Hey Girl" by the Chemical Brothers, huge worldwide hit.
Mm,
It sounds like every element is pure perfection. And what
mm,
Matt said to me is that was one of the tracks that got parked for many, many months, maybe even years,
yeah,
because they couldn't go anywhere with it and they couldn't do anything with it.
yeah,
But like to the untrained ear, like me, I just think of that track as like, oh, they must have just dropped that out of
yeah,
the
yeah,
computer and it was just amazing. But no, like yeah, you do have to. I think yeah, you just have to sometimes sit on things and think of them with a
yeah,
new
totally.
perspective.
And then when you do get that time, like a glorious day, um fuck me, you get you're just like, yes, and you're very focused. It does completely change. It has changed. Everything's changed how I'm working at the moment, and I think it's like actually really exciting. And so I think I'm moving towards something that for me is more interesting than just doing another guitar record or another synth pop sci-fi exploration. I think I kind of feel like it's time to sort of definitely go a bit further and deeper. So yeah, I'm excited about the opportunities that would come from that. And then I really do need to get my live kicks somehow.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you're in a really nice sort of feedback loop with your students
Mm.
and with the and with the soundtrack work. So I'm sure that will eventually propel you back onto the stage, but doesn't necessarily have to. You know, it's just like
Yeah, yeah. There's
it's
no.
it's a nice nurturing place.
I think so.
Um, Thank you so much for speaking to me, Charlotte. It's been really really nice to talk to you.
Thanks, Chris. I hope that was not too rambly.
No, it's fine. Have a nice rest of the day, Charlotte. See you
Thank you.
soon. Oh, wonderful to speak to Charlotte. That interview started life in 2021. That's how long ago it was that I asked her about speaking to her. So thank you so much to Charlotte for joining me on the show and sharing her story. And yeah, a lot to go and check out there. Certainly go and check out her solo work. Some really brilliant albums there and possibly more to come, as well as The Last Man, the short film that she stars in. And my personal recommendation as well would be NZCA Lines, their album Infinite Summer. It's an amazing piece of work. Cool, that was great. This is the penultimate episode of the year, so we are going to be wrapping things up in the final episode before Christmas and New Year. I'm going to recommend an episode with David from Plogue, David Viens, who's an amazing programmer, and you just can't believe how detailed that guy goes into programming the Plogue plugins like ChipSynth and all of the DX7 recreations, Yamaha Porter Sound recreations. He's amazing. Go and check out the interview that I did with him. Thank you once again for your support and your listenership. You can support Sonic State, as I said before, on Patreon or on YouTube. And that's it. Yeah, see you again soon.